Hi, I'm Nicole Hours. I'm an artist on the Sonoma County Art Trails Open Studio program, and I have the great joy of painting in Santa Rosa, California. I think the biggest thing is just that I've always painted what I felt, and I think that's really a key, to paint in a way that is intensely personal. And so that's one of the things that makes it unique. I also have a total passion for color. And one of my greatest joys is when friends have been watching me sketch or paint and they'll say, I didn't know that color was in there. And then from then on, they're able to look and see the wonderful variety of colors that are in everything around us. This painting was not supposed to be a painting. It was supposed to be just a colored canvas, so that when we started this experience together, I would be taking you along with how a painting starts. But this painting had its own ideas. It wanted to get born right away. So I spent about 2 hours on Saturday working on it. It just was flowing out and needed to be painted. So that's what happened. So what I'm doing now is taking it next steps. I've been looking at it, and looking is a really big part of painting for me. You have to just look and look and look until you feel like you're seeing into the bones and soul of whatever it is that's being painted. And on doing that, I realized that I wasn't happy with this part of the painting that I'm working on now, that it was, this part had all the energy, and this part needs to have its own energy. So I'm looking at how it needs to grow to have its balance within the painting as a whole.
I'm Bill. I'm an art trails artist. I've been painting for about 30 years. Been doing art trails for about 6 years now. I'm a colorist. I do landscapes, both plein air and studio work. You'll find a lot of depth in my paintings, a lot of pathways and roads leading in. Could be creeks, could be paths. The color in my paintings comes from a limited palette, but I try to use the brightest combination and mixtures of paints that I can. I mix all my greens. I don't use anything out of a tube on green. I like to specialize in doing landscapes that include the sky, the water, the land of Sonoma County. Putting in shadows in the lower part of these trees where the sun isn't getting, and it's the usual process. Darks go in first and lights go on top. Nice thing about oils is when you're doing this, you can go ahead and blend, which you really can't do with a lot of other types of paints.
I'm Nina Bonos, and I will be celebrating my 30th year in art trails this year. I'm a painter, generally watercolor, very many layers and layers of watercolor, so I've decided to experiment and use more acrylic. Today I've been working with a sea sponge on some olive branches, and I like to paint growing things, particularly grapes, olives, and pomegranates. And it's what surrounds me. It's happy and makes me feel good. Oh yeah, so I have olive branches from our 50-year-old tree in the backyard that I actually pressed with a steam iron and then spray painted. So I have the impression of the design underneath here. And I am just going over with a sea sponge, applying some color. Just started this yesterday, so it's pretty fresh, and I'm gonna see where it takes me. Have to make sure that the branch is in the right position because I've worked really hard to get the shadows on here. And this is not just an idea of an olive painting, it's the real olive branches. So when I'm painting olives, I like to pick just the right olive and eat it so I can get the feel of the taste in my paintings. I like to really get into my work, and eating the fruits is one way to do that. It also makes it a lot of fun.
Hi, my name is Abby Bard and I'm a weaver. I've been on art trails almost 20 years now, and I love having people come to my studio. When you come in, you're going to see my looms, and I make all the things that you see in this room. I weave the fabric on the looms. So in order to weave, I press my foot down on this treadle. The treadle lifts up some harnesses, and each warp thread is attached to a harness. It's threaded through one of these heddles. They're like big needles with an eye through it. So each one has its own heddle, and it lifts, the harness is lifted and the threads lift up. When I switch feet, another set of yarns is lifted up, and I can send the weft yarn back through the web, and I just alternate my feet. The weft yarn goes around the end of the warp yarn and locks it in. And I pull the beater forward, and that presses the yarn into place. And I just keep repeating. And gradually, the yarn will pack up onto the warp, and I'll have to advance the warp to give myself some room to weave. So I press down on this treadle over here, which releases the brake on the back beam and allows me to advance the warp forward.
I'm Monica Schwalbenberg Pena. I'm an art trails artist. Been in art trails about 10 years, I believe. And my art is about place and the everyday. I do a lot of landscape, pastel, watercolor, monotype, and I do image transfers. The image transfer process is a multimedia process. It's a combination of photography, printmaking, and painting. I take a photograph with slide film. I take the slide and I put it in this little machine, which is a slide printer. It prints it onto instant film. Now to actually do this, I have to do it in darkness, so this is a simulation. When I pull the instant film out of the machine, I separate negative from positive before it's completely developed. I take that negative, place it on watercolor paper, roll it with the brayer, and let it develop. When I peel that off, I get an image that's not as bright as the original, and it has all this kind of schmutz around the edge, which is actually rather interesting. When it's completely dry, I take it to an archival printer that works with me to make a reproduction that is as exactly like the original as possible. This is using a professional scanner and professional paper and pigments that will not fade, because the originals tend to fade. This way I can make a larger image. And when you put the color back in with the pastel, which is the really fun part, you get a very bright image.